Rev up your engines!
Well, here's an interesting one. Mercedes is unveiling a plan to split Mercedes Benz into two parts: Daimler Truck and Mercedes Benz cars. If you know a little about history, Volvo did that a while back. They split into the Volvo trucks and the Volvo cars. The Volvo trucks are still making a fortune. They make great trucks. I was in Houston, the garbage trucks originally, automatic garbage trucks, and they were made by Volvo. The Volvo truck company was worth a lot of money. The Volvo car company, nobody wanted it. Ford had them for a while. Now they're owned by the Chinese, so it's a completely different ballgame. They wanted the Volvo name and technology, so they bought it. Well, if you didn't know, Mercedes-Benz sold many more trucks in the United States last year than they did cars. Mercedes-Benz sold over $50 billion worth of trucks last year, worldwide. Daimler Truck is the largest truck producer in the world. And there's profit in that. Commercial profit. They're more expensive vehicles. Their car division, not that profitable anymore. That's probably why they're splitting it off. And you want to go even further back in time, Rolls-Royce. Most people think, Rolls-Royce, those cars, you know? Ages ago, Rolls-Royce split for their jet and airplane division motors, split from the cars. BMW owns Rolls-Royce cars. They're not that profitable. The plane motors, that was really profitable. The aerospace division was really profitable. The reason they're splitting is because all the money's in the trucks and they don't want to be held back by these cars with the luxury image, and then now they have a lot more problems than they used to. They used to be great made cars in the 60s, early 70s. They made bulletproof cars. Not anymore. But they still make bulletproof trucks and buses, so that's where their profit's going to come from. Now here's one you probably have to think about before you can even believe it. Porsche now claims that its synthetic fuel could make combustion engines as clean as electric vehicles. But you got to put a little asterisk on that one, because they're saying the entire process of creating the fuel and then burning the fuel, because of course electricity in the United States, a lot of it's made from coal burning plants, very polluting, and the actual creation of the electric cars and the lithium batteries creates a lot of pollution. Porsche is saying that their synthetic fuel is really bio-friendly, so it doesn't create that much pollution creating the fuel, and that it burns really clean. It still burns, of course, and pollutes. There's no arguing that. It's not like an electric car that doesn't pollute while you're using it. It's that the entire carbon footprint, they say, will be the same as an electric vehicle. You know, they're looking for anything, grasping at straws here. And of course, there's no proof that these synthetic fuels can be made at any massive level and be efficient. They make them in laboratories now, you know. They make 10 gallons of this, 50 gallons of that. When do they got to make millions of gallons of stuff? Then we'll see what the truth really is on that stuff. But Porsche's using this tiny little asterisk here to make it look like their cars are going to help the planet. Come on, Porsches are gas hogs. They're fast, low, racy cars. That's not the game. Of course, they're playing both ends to the middle because they make electric cars too. I mean, Bill Gates drives an electric Porsche. And we all know about Bill Gates and his new green book, how he's the most on-green man on the planet with fleets of jets and helicopters, and they import sand from the Caribbean to put on his beach inside of Seattle, I guess. I couldn't resist this one, that Porsche is jumping in on this green revolution too. WW Dog says, I got a code P135 faulty heater circuit, a primary upstream oxygen sensor on a Honda Odyssey. It's an '02 Odyssey, and I bought it from the previous owner who had bypassed the heater control for the oxygen sensor and rewired stuff. So I had that all rewired and even had the ECU replaced with VIN reprogram, and I keep getting that code help. Well, what I would say is, since you have the code for the upstream sensor, I would replace that with the factory setting. I would get a Denso upstream oxygen sensor, replace it, and pray the wiring he messed up was fixed correctly when you had it repaired. Because, let's say if that wiring wasn't fixed correctly, when the guy put the new ECU and reprogram it, if there's a short in that wiring, it'll short the driver circuit of the computer, and the new computer would be ruined. So pray the Denso oxygen sensor will fix it. Normally it will, as long as the wiring's okay. But if that wiring isn't okay, could have easily have ruined the computer that was just replaced. That's why you don't guess with things when you have somebody's rewired something. You got to have a pro rewire it, or learn how to rewire it by getting a wiring diagram yourself and check all the wires with meters. And then if it's bad, rewire the whole thing. Put a new sensor in because it might be shorted out. And then see what happens. And then if you need a computer, you'll know, hey, you did did everything else correctly, so the computer's the only thing left. Don't start with the computer because you can easily ruin it. Overkill in 1970 says, I got a 2004 GMC Envoy 4L60 tranny. Engine is 173,000. Transmission is 92,000. The transmission I bought used with 92,000 miles. Owner says it was rebuilt. The transmission won't go over 65 miles an hour like the previous one did. The RPMs go to 3,800 and I have to let off to make it shift. Well, here's the problem is you can't believe anything anybody says about used transmissions. I've had more people everywhere, Houston, here in Tennessee. They'll buy some, oh, it was rebuilt. No, it wasn't. Some idiot worked on it who didn't know what the heck they were doing. And the main problem is the thing was never rebuilt correctly, if at all. Those are not that good transmissions. Their lifespan is only a certain amount of miles on it, and then they break. And unless a pro rebuilds them, they'll never run the same. Grandson got one, and the guy told him, oh yeah, I rebuilt the transmission. Well, the guy might have rebuilt the transmission, but it shifted like crap, because the guy didn't fix it right. And when you buy a used one that the guy says, oh, it was rebuilt, you can't believe a word anybody says. Now, if I were you, and I see by your thing you got too much money invested, I would go to a guy like me, any good transmission guy, get his dealer scanner, road test it, and check. And we can do bi-directional testing. Pray something like a solenoid pack is wrong, and you can replace that in a transmission instead of having to rebuild the whole tranny. From what you tell me, you take your foot off the gas, and then it shifts from the high RPM down to the next gear. That's almost always the inside of the transmission is just flat worn out. Somebody sold you a crappy used transmission. That's why I say it's just riverboat gambling. Buying a used transmission. You know, you have no idea what the truth is behind it. Joshua, the mechanic noob, says, hey, what's a normal alternating charging volts when checking the battery? Mine with all accessories is 13.6 volts when checking through a digital voltmeter on the battery terminals. You got to understand, it actually changes over time. When you start a car up, you drain the battery to start the car. Then it's got to recharge it fast. So after you start a car, the charging will often be 14.2, 14.6, 14.8 volts because it's charging it up. But then once it's charged up, if you turn all your accessories on and it's sitting there idling, 13.6 volts is perfectly fine. Realize your car's battery, the 12 volt battery, let's say, but actually it's a 13.2 volt battery because there's 6 cells and each is 2.2 volts. So that's 13.2 volts. That's the full charged battery. And so as long as your alternator is charging over that, you're charging, you're not losing any, and you don't care. And since you got a full load on, that's running absolutely everything. You'll probably notice if you turn all the loads off, the charging will go up a little bit. But it doesn't matter. As long as it's above 13.2 volts, it's actually charging your battery. And like I say, over time, it'll charge it different. If it's right after you start it, if it's cold in the morning, it'll charge a little bit higher. In the summer, it won't have to charge as much. It gets relatively complex, but yours is working perfectly fine. CJ Binmain says, I got a 2015 Toyota Prius with 70,000 miles. Regularly serviced at a Toyota in Seco. I've been a loyal customer, but I went and they said I need new pads and rotors for $986. They said the pads are measuring 3 millimeters. I didn't believe it, so I measured it, and the pads were 5 millimeters all around. I went back and said it didn't need pads. So I went back to the dealer and had a heated confrontation with the service manager and a mechanic. So they replaced the pads and rotors for free. Should I be concerned about anything they might have done in retribution for my free brake job? No, I wouldn't worry about that because they were shaking in their boots that they lied to you and tried to sell you brakes that weren't worn out all the way, and they gave you free pads and rotors because they want to placate you not to tell people that they were trying to rip you off. Well, you just told us that they were ripping you off, so their little ploy didn't work out too well. I doubt that they do anything, just I would look at it to make sure they were replaced, First they're trying to rip you off for $986 and then they do it for free. They're covering their own heinies because they try to lie to you and you caught them in a lie, so they gave you free rotors and pads on the car. It just shows you complain and you show a little information. I am surprised though that they did it for free. They would have never done that in Houston. I'd never seen anything like that because they got caught in a lie, and I guess they figured in Maine it's smaller and less population there. Maybe they were afraid the word would get around these guys to rip everybody off, and you'll say, oh, they gave me a free brake job. Kind of backfired though for them, didn't it? Scotty's 94 Celica says, Scotty, I've been browsing Craigslist, saw a Buick Skylark for $2,295. 1994. It says 74,000 miles on the odometer. The picture shows the interior is good, and it says it runs and drives fine. Would it be a good buy? It's a 94. I really doubt it actually has 74,000 miles. So many guys cheat on that stuff, set them back, put a different odometer. I wouldn't really know. If the interior is good, if it runs and shifts good, a mechanic says it's a good car, hey, $22.95 isn't much for a car. Just realize, and this is something that unfortunately a lot of my customers didn't realize till it was too late. I always warn them now. You're going to buy a car, and that car is what? 27 years old. Unless you just go to the grocery store and back. You can't buy a 27-year-old car, get it, and think you're going to drive it 15, 20,000 miles a year and not put a lot of money into it. All the rubber's going to be rotten. Transmission seals, engine seals, brake system, cooling system, heating system. Odds are the AC isn't going to work either. What do you want in a car? If you want a weekend toy, hey, not a bad idea. But don't think you're going to buy something like that and use it for an everyday driver without putting a small fortune into it, too. You always realize if you get in a car that old, it's more of a toy or something to show off than it is an everyday driver. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.